Someone that you put in jail for 2 felonies, injury to a child and ag assault, and he came back and committed 3 more felonies yesterday. I don't know if that's consensual, right? A reasonable person doesn't feel that they're free to go. But yeah, I mean, that is a very good question, which sounds like they had a Glock switch.
I think this is the most important video I've done.
118, tell this my family hello. I can't copy. I can't tell our family hello. We got crews coming.
Stand by. We got to restart. I forgot to hit record.
That's funny.
At least we only got 5 minutes into it.
That's funny.
Good practice, though.
Yeah.
I did this with Tactical Carl.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go back at the end for the first 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, I messed up. All right. Welcome back to the Surviving the Street podcast, where policing meets personal growth, tough conversations, and partially filtered stories of real events. With me on the podcast today, I have a fellow law enforcement officer who was present with me on another podcast we already did together, and he'll be present again on more podcasts in the future. This podcast is going to be a little bit different than the ones previously. I have the Monday morning quarterback episodes that I kind of keep on YouTube. This really isn't a Monday morning quarterback episode, but you will see a body camera during the episode of this podcast if you're watching it on Spotify or on YouTube. That's probably best. Otherwise, if you're not seeing what we're seeing, it may not make a lot of sense. He has not seen this body camera. I think you know where it's from. I just told you where it's from, but I haven't told you any of the particulars about what happens in the video, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just California. That's all I
Yeah.
know.
So before we get into that, February 1st, I'm launching the Surviving the Street community. It's going to be a web page and an application that you can download on your phone. It's going to be $5 for the first 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, that price is going to increase by $5. So it's going to pay to kind of get in early. Right now, as contributors in the community, I have Blake Water from Maneuver Training Solutions and Matt Harden from OpTempo Training Group, and we should be locking in another contributor later today. We're going to be doing giveaways for the first 9 weeks. I'm giving away all the funds from the membership to a member in the community. So it's going to kind of pay to get in early, and you're going to lock in whatever rate you get into the community at. If you leave the community and come back, whatever the rate is at that time, that's where you're going to end up paying. We're going to be doing giveaways every month, whether it's gear or also cash giveaways as well. On the website, on the platform of the community, you'll be able to interact with all the contributors, myself, Blake Water, Matt Harden, and whoever else comes. And you'll also be able to take online courses. Some of the courses will be free. Some of the courses you'll have to do certain things to unlock those courses, which is basically participating in the community. And then, of course, at some point, some of those courses will also be courses that you'll have to pay for. You ready to get into this?
Oh, I'm ready.
So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to play it here for him. You might just see this on your screen, like you normally would on YouTube, and then we'll make the adjustment from there.
At approximately 1:48 a.m., when 2 of our officers patrolling along Banbury Drive saw a silver BMW sedan stopped in front of the vehicle entrance gate to an apartment complex located in the 3600 block. The officers ran a records check on the license plate, where they learned that the vehicle had been recently towed and stored as a result of the driver being arrested. They conducted an occupied vehicle check and notified dispatch of their activity. As both officers approached the idling vehicle, the cover officer looked through the windshield and immediately noticed that Ryan Smith had a gun on his lap. Our officer drew his duty weapon and gave repeated commands to Smith to get his hand off the gun. At one point, Smith lifted his hand up, but then put it back down on the gun. The officer then fired 5 times at Smith.
Don't do it. Don't you do it. Don't do it. Get your hand off the gun now. Get your hand off the gun now. Get your hand off the gun. Don't you reach, bro. Don't you turn the car off. Don't reach for the gun. Do not reach for the gun. Where you shot at, bro? Don't do it. Don't you do it.
What do you see?
Don't do it. Get your hand off the gun now.
No.
Get your hand off the gun now. Get your hand off the gun. Don't you
5-5, start fire. Start medical. One grabbing for a gun.
don't reach for the gun. Do not reach for the gun.
Smith was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced deceased a short time later. Officers learned Ryan Smith was currently on probation out of Los Angeles County for weapons violations. A record check that night revealed that he had an active arrest warrant for a weapons offense out of Los Angeles County and a warrant out of Texas for possession of marijuana. In March of 2023, Smith was arrested by the Fontana Police Department for firearms violations, then again in November for an arrest warrant, and by our police department in October for an arrest warrant. He was also found to be associated with a criminal street gang out of Fontana, and his tattoos and social media corroborated his gang affiliation. The firearm Smith had in his possession during this incident was a .40 caliber Glock handgun with a high-capacity magazine loaded with 25 rounds. A ballistic examination and test of Smith's gun determined that it was modified to be fully automatic.
Right hot.
Okay, so I know where your wheels are spinning here. So if I didn't already say this, I think this is the most important video I've done, and it has nothing really to do with tactics, although we'll talk a little bit about that. So I think it's important, and as we're listening to it and looking at it, we know kind of what we're hearing and seeing, and we can like check the boxes, right? And let's just start at the beginning, right? You're on patrol and you run a plate that says that somebody was arrested in that vehicle.
Right.
Okay. Kind of based on what you know, how you would kind of do that, right? And then based on what you saw, just kind of start from the beginning and work your way into how you would handle that investigation.
Right. Man, those hits on a car, those can often lead to great arrests, you know, especially if they're recent. If they're within like 2 or 3 months, someone's been arrested in that car, chances are within those 2 or 3 months, they've skipped court, you know. So that's one of the things I check for. I'll run that plate. If it comes back, hey, someone's been arrested here. I'm gonna run all the occupants in that vehicle. I'm gonna look at that case, see if there's any warrants, see what was in the car, so you kind of have a knowledge of what you're looking for, what to expect when you walk up and approach that car.
So before we get there, though, let's say you're on patrol and you run a car, and the car is telling you that somebody was arrested at some point in that vehicle. What else do we need to do, though? Like, is that enough to stop a car?
No, you can't just stop it there. You got to develop some sort of reasonable suspicion to go over there and detain that vehicle.
Right. So reasonable suspicion or probable cause, if you're going to do that.
Right.
A traffic violation, which is what you should do, right? I mean, if you have the time available to you, stack up these things. That makes sense, because it's always better to say, oh, not only this, but I also had this and this, right?
Right.
Now in Texas, when we're running vehicles, it's not really a quick process, and especially if you're by yourself, it's not a practical thing to do at all, is be able to run the plate, see that somebody was arrested in it, and figure out what happened in that incident.
Right.
And who the person is, you know, like, although, I mean, what I'm saying is we can basically pull up the report and see the offense report, but that maybe probably as far as you're going to get if you're by yourself.
Yeah, well, it kind of looks like in this video that they were going to pass and kind of read the license plate off to the right, like they saw this vehicle to the right of them, and then once they realized it was involved in something, they just kind of ducked in. Now that might be wrong, I mean, but that's kind of what it looks like.
Exactly. So that's what I was also, because it happened fast.
Right.
And so that I talked to an officer in California and asked him how this works, and he's from the area but not where this occurred. You didn't see the shooting portion because I don't want this to get restricted and blocked. So, but it's Riverside Police Department, so you can just go on their YouTube channel and watch that portion. But there's nothing really significant about the shooting portion that really needs to be discussed or even viewed. But if you feel like you missed something, you can go back there.
Right.
He shoots through the windshield. They back up. The guy falls out of the car, and that's when they approach, and you'll see that part. But so in California, though, when they run a plate, or they can run the plate and they can get more information quickly, is what I learned. It'll kind of like populate the information about the people that were arrested, per se. But also in our discussion, he kind of agreed that still feel like they didn't have enough time to do that.
Right.
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 So now this is the way that you should be thinking as a police officer, right? Probable cause, reasonable suspicion, or consensual encounter. Okay. Now, obviously, probable cause is any violation of the criminal code, penal, traffic code, city ordinances.
Right.
Those are all probable cause. Reasonable suspicions is daytime, place, activity, whatever you deem that criminal activity could be, either had already happened, is going to happen.
Right.
Right. Afoot. Criminal activity is afoot. You can detain people for that. And so my concern with this is, we've done this many times, right? This thing. And you can't hear what their body cameras are saying before they come out of the car. So maybe they had this conversation. But I think that, especially if you're working with somebody, like, we need to be on the same page. Like, which one is it? Like, what are we doing? And sometimes it's already known because you're like, oh, turn signal. No one's talking about that. We get it, right?
Right. Right.
Reasonable suspicion. That's also kind of another pretty obvious thing. Like, hey, I think he's doing something. Let's detain him, right?
Right.
Now, the consensual encounter thing, even though you're with your partner and at least what I would do, what I've done is make it known to your partner. Like, just say, hey, consensual encounter, just so we're all on the same page. And what are some things that, what is consensual and what isn't? Could you explain maybe?
Well, pertaining to this, I don't know if that's consensual, right? Somebody has to feel, a reasonable person would have to feel that they're free to go, right? If we're having a conversation with somebody, that goes back to a show of force, right? How many officers are there? What is their approach? Even how they're standing. Do you have the whole car lit up with flashlights? Anyone that's been stopped by the police, they know the difference between, when they're free to go and when they're not, right? Do you have your lights on? Do you have your overhead lights on? That can be considered a detention, right? It really comes down to, does that guy in the front seat, in a situation like this, does he feel like he can just drive away?
Right. And I would say, now, were they bumper to bumper? Were they really close? No, they weren't.
But he couldn't reverse and leave. I've run into this a lot, and when we pull in places with the expectation of consensual encounters, we don't block cars in, because you can't. They have to be free to go.
Right. It's up to the individual person that you're speaking with to walk away. You don't have to say, like, you're not being detained, you're not in trouble, you're just in a place that you have the legal right to be, as are they, and you're having a conversation with that person.
Right.
And if they just say, like, no, man, I'm not talking to you, then that's it.
Right.
They're free to go.
Your line of questioning, how you approach them in your initial conversations with them also play a factor into, if you just immediately walk up to somebody and not really demand their ID, but ask in a, demanding way. You know what I mean? Like, can I see your ID? Like, let me have your ID. Right? If you just walk up to a random person, they're going to think that they're being investigated for something, right? Or
you say, come here, let me talk to you even.
Right.
That could be like, well, he told me to come here. I'm going to listen to him. He's a police officer.
Right.
And so I'm kind of, this is the question that I guess I haven't said it yet, but I'll say this. So I commented on this video on their YouTube channel, and I just asked questions. If you know who I am, if you know Kinetic Concepts and Surviving the Street, you know that I'm a reasonable person on social media, especially, and I don't say things I shouldn't be saying. So I just asked questions that were curious to me, and that was one of the questions I asked, which was he free to leave?
Right.
Or was, that was one of the questions I asked. And they deleted my comment, which tells me that they kind of don't want people thinking that way, right?
Right. Either that or you're giving the family some ammo to sue. You never know. But yeah, I mean, that is a very good question. And they didn't really describe any part of the backstory, which I don't know if there is one or not. There may be, right? This may be, like they always say, it's an ongoing investigation, right? They don't want to release everything right away. That's understandable. They may have been looking at this car for something. They may have been looking for it, and then there he is, right? He could have just ducked away. There's a few things that could have happened that led them to there that's just not articulated or explained in the video. I would hope that's the case. I would hope they didn't just walk up on a car and, but who knows,
So yeah, okay. Consensual encounters, they have to feel like they are free to leave. And obviously that's not something that's going to be, you get into an incident and something happens, like someone gets killed. Like that's not something that we're going to know right away. You talked about maybe there was more information that we don't know and they're not saying it. However, if you listen to the way in which this video was put together, I mean, somebody was killed by the police.
Right.
Not very popular.
Yeah, no, especially in California.
So if you had information that would justify.
Yeah, I did notice at the end of that video, they're shooting. Is that the gun?
Yeah, so I want to get to that.
So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, we're going to get to a couple things that they did in the video to make it kind of seem like they were, you know,
painting a picture.
But all of those things came after.
Right. They didn't know who he was. Yeah, that's a good point, because I would like to think if they knew who he was or even his weapon charges, they would have different approaches. I mean, if you know he has a warrant for weapons charges and this is where he's at, knowing that he can't drive away because he's in front of a gate, probably should have done a high-risk vehicle stop, felony stop. So yeah, that also leads me to believe that they didn't know who he was, which is still fine. To start an investigation, you're never going to know who's in that car. You may think you know, but you're never going to know for sure.
And we've talked about this before, and this is why this conversation is so important. We talked about the fruit of the poisonous tree, and we didn't go in depth on it, but I think we just mentioned it. It's like, if you don't have a legal right to be where you are and you're detaining something illegally or someone illegally, you're searching something illegally, then everything after the fact doesn't matter. Right. It's fruit of the poisonous tree. It's irrelevant. And actually, they may not even allow that all the details that they put in this video in a courtroom. Right. If they would start at the very beginning. What information did you have? Was this probable cause? Was this a reasonable suspicion? Or was it consensual? Right. And they're going to have to basically pick something, or two.
I don't think that guy even rolled his window down. Right. Was the driver's window down? I don't think so. Yeah. So they didn't even have a conversation with him, which is, that's not required. You know what I mean? I'm just very curious as to how they articulated it after. This is one of those deals where I'd love to read the report.
Well, they didn't have a conversation with them. There wasn't time to, because they had already saw the gun, right? Let's just give them that.
And I've been in situations like that as well, where you walk up to a car and then there's guns in plain view. And it's no longer, hey, my name's so-and-so, I work with whatever department. Can I have your ID, please?
Right. But you also know the premise for being there is legitimate.
Right.
So when you see it, you're good. Like, that's the whole purpose, right? Mm-hmm. In what we do. It's like there's guys hanging out at the corner store, probably selling drugs maybe or whatever. Hey, we're going to do a consensual encounter, which is like great. Mm-hmm. Probably going to find something.
Yeah.
And you're just going to walk up like you're walking to the store, right? You're not, if you're going to go stand there and talk to the person and you're at his door, because that's where he is, and that's like, oh, what is that? Oh, I smell that. Then okay, right?
Right. You can develop things from.
Yeah, you can't just walk around every single car in the parking lot looking into the car to see if you can find something, right? Maybe probably getting a little bit. You're in a public place. Do you have an expectation of privacy in your own vehicle? I would just say, let's maybe walk the path that you would normally walk, right?
Right. You should be able to. Well, you should be able to articulate exactly what you're doing, but also not make it look like you're targeting specific individuals for no reason, right? Especially if you don't have a reason. If they're part of an investigation, that's a different story. If you can articulate it, why you're looking at specific things. I mean, my partner and I, we've looked in a lot of cars, right? We've been to many places, but we're also, pretty like we've been to these places a million times, right? We know exactly what we're dealing with when we go to certain places. We're not going to random places or non-high crime areas. We're only in high crime areas. This apartment complex, I think that's what they're driving into. That was gonna be my next question. Where are they going, right? Like, what kind of area is this? I don't know.
Right. So it is an entrance gate to a complex, but that is private property, right? It's not open to the public, obviously, because it's locked, it's closed. Probably no trespassing signs. You have to have some type of level of authorization to be in there.
Yeah, I'm sure these signs here, I mean, you can't read them from here, but usually in these complexes, they're all usually the same. No trespassing. They're not responsible if your car gets broken into, those things. This leads me to believe here that this guy didn't have access to this apartment complex, and it probably showed on the body camera what time of night this was, but chances are he doesn't belong here.
Right.
And like I said earlier, he could have been driving in front of them and done that. I'm going to duck off in a private property thing, and that happens often as well. I actually had something happen like that recently. They'll just duck off, right? And
yeah, so I don't know. I don't believe, like, okay, even if he ducked off, right? Let's say he did. That common thing happens to me almost every time.
Yep.
They see me flip around on them. They get behind them. They do something real quick, pull into a place where they don't belong, just to make it look like they belong there. And they're, I'm home now. I'm at my friend's house, whatever it is. Hopefully you saw a violation still, though.
Right.
Because yes, that is suspicious, right? And that leads into your thing, but is that all you have?
Right. That's one piece, right? That is a piece of reasonable suspicion. A second piece would be sitting at an entrance gate without a key, right? I don't reasonably believe this guy belongs here. Third piece, time of night. Fourth piece, where you at, right? What is this place known for? You know what I mean? Like, what time do crimes occur in this parking lot? If this is between the hours of maybe 2 and 5 a.m., and this place is known to get BMVs or, burglaries of motor vehicles in those hours, and we're going to see what this guy's up to. He doesn't belong here. And he's seen to have stopped all movement since he noticed our police presence.
I would be careful, though, on he clearly doesn't have authorization to be here because he's sitting here, because he could be waiting for someone to buzz him through.
He could be.
And they only saw it in 5 seconds and they turned around. That wasn't enough time for him to figure this problem out that he might be in. So that's, it's something. It's just something to consider.
Right.
Especially if you're sitting there, you pass by once and you're like, let me run this call real quick, and you came by and you're still sitting there. Now we're like, okay, there's an issue maybe.
Yeah. I'm just trying to pick things that they may have articulated or they may not have. But I don't know. I'm just throwing some things out there. Like, maybe this vehicle had more hits, right? Maybe it was used in a weapons charge. Maybe it's also 3 or 4 suspicious hits on it, that it's been involved in different things. You never know.
If you are conducting a probable cause stop or a reasonable suspicion stop on a vehicle, and you're going to say, I conducted a traffic stop. I initiated a proactive investigation. You're probably going to have your lights on.
Right.
Why are we doing that? I mean, it's going to clearly identify who you are without any question, really, right? I mean, obviously, there's people that fake cop. Okay, I get it. But that's one layer, right? Identified ourselves by using our overhead lights, and you're indicating that you have something. You have some legitimate reason to be there by doing that, right? Hopefully, that's why you're doing that. But you wouldn't do that on a consensual encounter.
Right.
And so I believe that they were probably, I think in the moment they were doing a consensual encounter, but I don't know that they had that communication and they kind of maybe necessarily knew it. Because here's like the real big problem. This is why you all need to pay attention to this, is what if, now this is California. It's very illegal to have a gun in your lap in California. That's what I'm told. Like, even have a gun probably.
Oh, so that's not illegal.
No, it is legal. It is legal. Or is illegal.
Oh, it's illegal.
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
gotcha. Okay.
Very illegal, right?
Right, okay.
But, we are talking about how we got there. That's really what we're talking about. That's important. And so once you're there, yes. Oh, wow. Crime. Like right off the bat.
Right. Which is common. That happens.
Right. Without getting into all of the other things. But the conversation I had with this other officer from California was, and this is why you need to pay attention to this, it's what if this was a guy who was coming home in a state in which he's allowed to have a gun and he fell asleep legitimately because he got off late at work and he knows he doesn't live in a very nice neighborhood. And so he parked his car. He's wherever he is on the curb on the side of the street. And he's like, I'm going to take a nap with my gun in case someone tries to rob me. And the first thing he sees and hears is, show me your effing hands with lights being pointed at him. Right. And then you end up shooting that guy.
Right. Right.
Again, it's not that it wouldn't end up being a justified shooting, right? Necessarily. But you don't want to put yourself in that position either to have to answer those questions or to have to shoot somebody like that.
Right.
You know, so that's, will you say something?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with where are they? And I don't think we're going to have the statistics on this exact address or what kind of area it's in.
All that's going to have to be a factor in this one for sure.
When did this happen? Do we know?
I don't remember the day.
Is it recently?
December 6th.
Oh, okay. So this is just a little over a month ago.
Yeah. And so here's the beginning part of this where the chief or whoever was running that was talking. He said officers were on patrol when they ran a license plate and they learned, and then he says that I think like the driver was arrested or somebody in the vehicle was arrested and the vehicle was towed. And that's the extent of what we know.
Yeah.
Based on why they made their approach.
And I think you're right. If they had more information, that would have been put out in the video. So the best way to put these videos out for the officer-involved shootings is to almost not give all the information you have, but let the viewer know what they have and what they're about to see so they can kind of understand it as it's developing. So you're not asking a million questions after.
Right. And so, again, my first question is, I don't believe it's probable cause. I think they know that. I think most people that are seeing this know that there's not, because he's on private property. And there's nothing that says that's something you would say. Like you would say that in the beginning of the video.
Right.
They don't. And so I don't believe that this would pass the consensual encounter test.
Right. Right. Yeah, this is not. I wouldn't say this is a consensual encounter.
Especially because the front gate is there.
Right.
Now, if he had freedom to drive forward, probably. I mean, yeah, he's free to leave.
But if he did have freedom to drive forward, would he? Right? When you angle your police car in a manner that's consistent with a traffic stop and then approach the vehicle in a manner consistent with a traffic stop, a reasonable person is going to believe they're on a traffic stop, even without the lights. Because there's a lot of police cars that when you put them in park with your lights on, the front red and blues will take off, and then the big takeoff lights will come on. Right, so it'll just be these spotlights on you.
Yeah, that's right. It does do that now, right?
Some of them do, yeah. And I mean, if this car's got a in-car camera, I would assume that it's probably a newer car. But this, to me, as it sits with the information that we have, doesn't look consensual and also doesn't look probable cause. So I'm going to assume that they had developed some sort of reasonable suspicion that hopefully they can articulate as to why they approached this vehicle.
And that's going to be all the things that we discussed, and maybe some things we didn't discuss or
Right.
whatever. And here's the other thing. So like I said, one, if you're by yourself, be careful. One, you're by yourself. Okay.
Yep.
Two, you have to understand it, right? You can't get out. I've done it. I know you do it. I know other people do, because maybe some people don't have partners or they, whatever the case is. So you got to understand what you're doing. You got to have the legal procedure understood in that regard and know going into it, okay, like I'm going to do a consensual encounter and walk to this convenience store, and if I smell something, odor of marijuana,
Right.
that's going to be my probable cause. And anything I find in the vehicle, because I smell the odor of marijuana, is, evidence of a crime. So you have to know that what you're doing and where it could lead you to. And let me just say this is, if they had that conversation and they said, hey, maybe not reasonable suspicion, but they understood, like, this is suspicious. Let's check on this car. We're not going to let him freedom of movement because we're detaining him. Right.
Right.
And, I guess they walk up to the vehicle and they see now they have a crime. Right. So now we're good, in that regard. But, I would consider from a tactical perspective again, or not again, but initially is, one, have that communication with your partner so you're on the same page and you know what you're doing. And, maybe it's not the best thing to stand at the front windshield and try to give this guy commands. However, let me go back real quick. What I was going to say is you haven't announced yourself. You haven't used your overhead lights or anything, lights or sirens. So there's just a car behind this guy as far as he's concerned.
Right.
And now you're at the windshield, and I think he was sleeping. I don't know for sure. Or passed out or something, right?
Okay.
So now he's being awoke, I think that's a word. Awakened, probably?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
He's being woken up by somebody pointing a gun at him, telling him to show him his hands, and he still does not know who you are or what's going on. That's a problem.
Right.
So even if we have, a reason to detain somebody, I mean, this isn't. You gotta
factor in what's reasonable.
Yeah.
Right. You gotta factor in what's reasonable given the circumstances. Now, I guess not to Monday morning quarterback, but I'm about to. They would have had a much stronger case during this if. So clearly they're about to drive by this place and they notice this vehicle parked here, not going through the gate, right? And that maybe takes a few seconds to figure it out as they're running it. Okay, this guy's still not going through the gate. Maybe he doesn't belong here. Why not pull in behind him? Just wait a little bit, right? As if you're pulling into the complex as well. Wait, what's the rush? Look up this stuff, right? And then it becomes a little more reasonable for a police officer to exit their vehicle and go check on this guy, right? Be like, hey, is this guy sleeping? Is there something wrong? Why can't we make entry into this apartment complex? And then while you're doing that, okay, now you see evidence of a crime rather than immediately pulling up and getting out. Like, what is the rush? Especially if this is completely random, like it appears so,
That was a good point. I did not think of that. Do all the things that you didn't have a chance to do yet.
Right.
Yeah, he's detained. It's suspicious, but hang on a second. Let's run it. I mean, you do that. Sometimes that happens. See if it comes back stolen. Oh, okay. Well, probable cause now.
Right. Right.
I would just say if you're doing a probable, always, especially at night, if you're doing a probable cause stop or a reasonable stopping somebody for reasonable suspicion, generally speaking, it's common practice to put your lights on.
Right. Right. Let them know you are not free to go.
Yes, and that we are the police.
Right.
So that's the main part of those things is the legal part of understanding why are we here? Do we have a legal right to be where we are? And why are we stopping this person? I've heard officers, what I don't like to do as a cop is tell people I'm going to do things I know I can't do.
Yeah, well, I don't do that either.
From a suspect's perspective. I don't, maybe you call it a bluff or whatever, but when I hear cops doing this, I feel like they're actually going to do that. And I'm standing there like, oh, wouldn't do that.
Right.
Right.
I know, I don't agree with that at all either.
Like, if you don't do this, then you're going to come with me or something, things along those lines. It's like, they're not. And my rule is I don't command anybody to do anything that I can't enforce, basically.
Right.
That's a good rule. Now, very occasionally, you do have to, for example, let's say you're on a scene and somebody is being not a nuisance, but they're causing a disturbance on your scene, and maybe they're a suspect, maybe they're a complainant, you don't know. And you've already told them, like, calm down, relax. We're taking care of it. We're going to talk to you here in a second. And, they don't stop doing what they're doing.
Right.
It's like now you can start saying, well, they're actually starting to meet elements of a crime at that point.
Right. Now they're interfering, whether they're pulling resources to a different part of this scene or whatnot. I mean, you see this on family violence deals all the time, or some sort of significant event, such as a shooting. You have the family members here, and a lot of them get excited and riled up. And it's understandable to a point, but when you're starting to now draw resources from an investigation, especially when you don't have the whole original reason why you're there, figure it out. When you got brother of the female that was just beat up by the boyfriend, now he wants to fight that guy or whatever, and he's just running his mouth, and then by doing that is now getting your suspect riled up. You don't need that.
And if you're going to handcuff somebody, you should, you have to have a reason why you're doing it, but the reason shouldn't be, you should know why you're doing it. Why are you detaining them, right? If you're not arresting them, right, if they've committed some violation of some sort, let's just say they littered, right, and now they're not listening, like they're not interfering with your investigation, but they're making something more complicated. Whatever they're doing that you don't want them to no longer be doing, you've already asked them to stop. Well, they already committed a probable cause, reason for detention. So you have that, right? And if they haven't committed a probable cause violation yet, then a common one is the interfering thing on scenes, right? Why you would handcuff someone. But what you want to try to stay away from is, illegally detaining somebody.
Right.
And, injuring them because now they don't, like, the use of force doesn't necessarily go how expected or whatever, right? All that stuff's going to come into play. Like, okay, they were injured. Well, why did you? They're going to go back, right? It starts at the beginning.
Right. It always starts in the beginning.
Okay.
Right? And then everything after that, if it's no good, well, see you later. Everything's going to get suppressed.
And you could be held well, you certainly will be held accountable by your department, but even if you don't have qualified immunity, because again, right, then you're looking at a civil,
right, and we're starting to see the qualified immunity even in states here. I think the only one so far is Colorado, right, that has actually eliminated qualified immunity. There might be a few more, but you're starting to see states that honor it are starting to lose it. In case-by-case situations. And I've seen a few of those that were not warranted for that. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful on what you're doing. That's why, I always tell people, and I don't ever want to be part of shady investigations. Like, you either have something or you don't. And if you can't explain to somebody, a regular person, I always tell people most people's mothers aren't police officers. Some are, but most people aren't. If you can explain to your mother why you detain somebody without probable cause on a reasonable suspicion, if you can explain it to a person like your mother and she can understand and be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, you're probably good, right? You probably have enough because most people's mothers are going to be reasonable, and you can sit there and explain, where you're at, who they are, what you watch them do, or what, you can explain your steps to get up to reasonable suspicion. And if a regular person's like, okay, cool, then you're good. If you really gotta press the issue and manipulate some facts and all that, you just don't do it, because when things do go south, and they go south, clearly, you got to answer to some questions in front of some people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And another thing that I see too with this, where I was saying, like, I don't even entertain enforcing things on people or commanding people unless I'm already checking those boxes, because and the reason is because I know if this starts to go south or starts to escalate, I'm going to execute the thing that I already decided they're committing that crime or whatever it is. And what I see is cops are trying to get people to do the things they want them to do, and going to the point where, okay, I'm going to detain you or I'm going to do this, and they're uncertain when they're doing it. And then when you meet resistance, you're very uncertain.
Right. And then they start hesitating.
Yeah, you start hesitating because now you're like, well, I'm not even really sure if I should be doing this. And now that he's resisting on me, like, if I continue, then this could all go bad, like, for me. And so I'm just going to be soft, right? Or give up entirely, or whatever the case is.
One of the things that I've started to see here in the recent years is people do this half hands-on thing. They'll grab a wrist and then they'll just kind of wait to see what the suspect does. They won't go full hands-on. Recently, very recently, I watched two people go to put somebody in handcuffs for exactly what we were talking about. Somebody getting out of control on a family violence scene, right? I watched them give commands, didn't listen. I watched them give, kind of threats, threats of, like, you're going to be putting handcuffs in the back of the car. Doesn't listen. They go hands-on, resists, right? Not to a level of a fight, but they just didn't go in handcuffs. And then, they didn't go in handcuffs. They just let go.
And oftentimes you spend too much time trying to talk to the person when it's like unsafe, still unsafe. And, like, if they're in a vehicle and they're refusing to get out, well, are they free to go? Are you detaining them? Why are you detaining them?
Right.
And that level of continuing to let something go on that is continuing to be safe tells me uncertainty in a way.
You know, one of the things that I've never agreed with and I don't ever do is I don't have court on the street, you know, especially when I'm trying to detain somebody and they don't want to be detained. That's not the time to sit here and have a conversation. Most reasonable people, if you tell them they're going to be detained for something, will just allow it to be detained. You know, they'll just willingly give up, put their hands behind the back, or you can detain someone without putting them in handcuffs, and that happens often. You know, if we have full compliance from somebody, it's just, hey, can you just stand over here? Pat them down for weapons. You know, no need to stuff them in the back of the car or anything. We'll just have a conversation out here. But when you start meeting resistance, and you always know, you always have that look, you know, when they know they're guilty of something or they have a warrant or there's something in the car, you can usually tell that, and, you know, at those times it's time to put them in handcuffs. But this whole, let's talk about it, you know, and try to talk them in the cuffs after they're physically resisting. No. You just put them in handcuffs, put them in the backseat of your car, work your investigation, articulate it well in your report. A lot of people get this body camera thing confused with having to narrate to your camera step by step and having to explain to these people, you know, step by step, like why they're being detained while, you know, in the middle of fighting them. Now, I don't see anything wrong with telling people, you know, why you're there in the investigation that you're conducting. Sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes it's not. That's case by case. But to sit there and argue with them, you know, as you're trying to detain them is just a horrible idea.
Yeah, and the reason really though is for safety reasons. Continuing to let this thing. One thing that I was told at some point, and it stuck with me, and it's pretty much, you know, my philosophy is ask you, tell you, show you. Right. So I'm going to ask you professionally. I'll probably ask you several times, you know.
Right.
And then I'm going to tell you what I want you to do, and probably do that several times. And then if you're not,
Right.
I'm just going to have to do something. Right. So I'm going to tell a quick story. Try and wrap this up here in a few minutes. But I took this story out of the previous video that actually me and you had made, but it's relevant here, so I'll tell it real quick and be vague. But essentially, I was going to a call and I saw a vehicle that didn't have a license plate, and I was already going to the call, and you know it ducked into a location, and I just said, let me go run this call, come back this way. And as I was coming back, I saw the vehicle, you know, drive across the street to another location, and you know, so I already had probable cause.
Right.
Guy doesn't have a license plate. I know I can stop this vehicle. Anything that comes from the vehicle, you know, is all fair as long as you're arresting him and doing inventory or whatever the case may be.
Right. Whatever that leads.
Or consent to search, right? So I pull into the location where this vehicle is, I believe it to be, and just so happened that he was coming back out again because he was just doing this game, right? There's reasonable suspicion now, right? Because he's in an area where cars are getting stolen a lot. A common tactic for people to evade police detection for stolen vehicles and not have a plate on it at all, right? It's well, I'm not going to give away any secrets, but so there's those two things, you know. Does it make sense? I mean, maybe it makes sense that he was in one location across the street and drove to the other location. We'll give him that. Does it make sense that he would do that and then come right back out at the time that he thinks that I would be gone? No, that's another. That's not normal behavior.
Clue.
So all that, probable cause, reasonable suspicion, checking all the boxes, and then as I turn around in this vehicle, he doesn't go back out onto the street, right? He does the thing where you dodge. Okay, let me get out of my car. He does something else. He's basically outside of his vehicle. I do the lights, you know, all that stuff because I'm stopping you. You're not free to leave.
Right.
Probable cause, and reasonable suspicion. So I'm thinking in my mind, this car's stolen for sure, right? And I get out. Hey man, let me talk to you for a second. You know, he's immediately verbally aggressive, I guess you want to call it, but not non-compliant. We'll just say that. Like, man, I didn't do nothing. What are you stopping me for?
Right.
Well, come over here. Let me talk to you. You know. And I think I even said to him, "You don't have a plate on your car." He said something. You know, again, like, you know, so what? You know.
Right.
And so now I could detain him right then, handcuff him. In furtherance of my investigation, I could arrest him for in Texas, at least for Class C, right?
Right.
But I know at least I'm putting handcuffs on this guy so I can figure out exactly what's going on here. But the next thing that I do is I ask him, do you have a driver's license? because I'm probably sure he didn't, right?
Right.
Or at least be able to produce it.
If you don't have a license put in your car, yeah, I'm willing to bet there's no no driver's license or insurance to go with it.
Well, that's the thing too, right? And again, I'm getting kind of into Texas laws here, traffic code, but you have to have your license on you. You have to be able to produce your license to an officer. So just not having it on you is a violation in and of itself, right? So do you have a driver's license? No, I don't. Okay. Either you don't have one, which I don't remember if he did or he didn't, but he wasn't able to produce it. So now we got another Class C violation. So I go to, then I say, hey, turn around, put your hands behind your back. And he's, again, non-compliant. I'm not doing that, basically, you know? So then I grab onto him immediately because I see that he's trying to run, basically. And long story short, I had already called for backup, right? Because I'm by myself and always get more people there. More numbers if you can. And because of his behavior leading up to, and the fact that he didn't listen to me when I gave him the opportunity to comply peacefully, and when I grabbed onto him to hold him so he didn't run, he grabbed onto my hand or my wrist. And everything was already in place. So I just executed, a trained technique of an arm drag and put him down on the ground. And when you do that, I call it 0 to 100, right? You have all the legal stuff in place and you're kind of setting that person up. And I believe, and what's served me well over the years is you shouldn't waste the opportunity to do exactly what you were trained to do and what you should do, at the best of your ability, to get them to understand, right? To gain control of the situation. And when I do that, it's usually worked out in my favor where they at least stop actively fighting.
Right.
Like they're still non-compliant like he was, but he was not trying to run. He was not trying to fight me. He was just not doing, again, what I told him to do. But it immediately changed his behavior.
Oh, yeah. Well, those are all the signs of someone who's about to run or someone who's about to resist or, so you might as well get ahead of it before it gets worse.
Yeah. So let's talk about this video and how it was put together because I think it's interesting.
Yeah,
So
it definitely was.
When I was putting this together so that he could see it streamlined and not the way that I moved some things around, but basically they had the initial part where he says they learned this, they approached the vehicle or conducted an investigation.
Which that's usually common in most departments. They'll give you a little backstory. In this case, not much.
Yeah. So the officers do what they do. We already discussed all of that stuff. I'll talk about this because I saw this, and I disagree. People have said in the comments on places that this officer basically wasn't helpful or was maybe scared or whatever. And I actually feel like he did more of the correct thing, which it seemed like he was trying to disengage and say, okay, hey, let's, because he could also be thinking too, well, I'm driving this police car.
Right.
I kind of know that we didn't necessarily get what we needed in place. So maybe we should just back up because we don't want it.
What if this, his partner here is overly eager, I don't think he can see in this car either. Based on the way he's acting, he can't see what's in there. I think at one point he asked his partner, what do you see? What do you see? Because he can't see in that car, which he didn't make the windshield approach either, which, man, I really don't like the windshield approaches. But when your partner already does it, you don't have much of a choice. I mean, whoever is doing it puts your partner in a really bad spot because, well, now that's a really bad crossfire,
You're talking about right here?
Yeah, so it looks like he's there kind of a normal traffic stop position. He's going out a little wider, going out to the front, but
why not even approach from the passenger side, instead of putting yourself up at the driver, you know what I mean? Like flip-flop this. Have the driver, have this officer that's at the driver's window step back to the bumper and let him approach and see from that side. That's a tactic. It's a passenger side approach. Mm-hmm. I have a video on the YouTube about why, not necessarily why that becomes beneficial after the shooting starts. Okay.
Right.
Real quick. There's kind of in that video, what you'll see, I don't remember the title of it. It's in the tactical training portion on the YouTube playlist, but don't get confused and think that on the approach, you're safer at the passenger side Because when the standard exists, which is somebody actually watching and ready to shoot you, you have an equal opportunity to really get shot on either side. Initially,
Yeah.
the benefit becomes their ability to continue to engage you after the shooting starts. Because if you're on this side, obviously shooting starts, you're maybe running more into his path, or now he has an opportunity to get out and track you down. Whereas if you're on this side and the shooting starts, boom, you can disengage and he has to overcome all that stuff to get to you again.
Right, right. I mean, there's benefits to both. I don't agree with there's one way to do it.
Yeah,
So.
I don't agree either. It's just a decision that you have to make. And that's what I tell people when they ask me what's better. I just say the passenger side is safer after the shooting starts.
Right.
Because if I want to wait until the opportunity to shoot you on the passenger side, I'll just wait and I'll shoot you.
Yeah.
Shoot at you or whatever.
Well, and those approaches, it really goes back to what do you know about this car? What do you know about the occupants in the car? If you already think he's armed and you're going to end up in a shootout, you're not going to walk up to that car. You're going to try to talk him out or go for other tactical options rather than approaching it. If you're approaching a car, you don't reasonably think you're going to get shot when you walk up there. Is it possible? Always, right? But if you know those facts prior to, you should be pulling them out. So I don't know. I think it works. Each one has their own place.
That's why also in this video, I know most reasonable people, when you see the content that I'm putting out, most people get it and they're like, this is common sense stuff, right?
Well, yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
But
And there's a select few people that think that we probably talk about this thing and we're saying, disengage every time and get back and don't press people and don't be aggressive. No, that's not what we're saying. And this is a good example of why when you have the opportunity available to you, it's a good idea to back up. Because let's just say, for example, that let's just say they have to go to court, period. Like let's just say there's a trial, which is not where you want to be.
Right.
Right. That could have been avoided if they just pulled back. So not even, there's tactical reasons why it's better, usually, but legal reasons too. Like, hey, we don't really know exactly how we started this necessarily. Let's just get back. And now at that point, you saw the crime and maybe it's still no good, but nobody got shot and you're not going to court.
Right.
In prison. And so what's interesting about this is they usually do put, I would say, warrants inside of, they'll say they're wanted or they'll put up their picture or whatever. I don't know that I've usually seen them put up a suspect's criminal history in a body camera.
Well, not to this extent either. I've seen where they say, hey, he's wanted for felony warrants or whatever. They wanted to make it known that he was wanted for firearms charges. And he was a convicted felon. He wasn't supposed to have his gun anyway.
And when did they give you that information? They gave it to you after the shooting happened because that's when it happened. They know that they can't lead with that. Or they could lead the video with that and say, after the shooting, the officers learned, here's the shooting.
Right.
And even though it's at the beginning, you're placing it in the past. So
you would try to confuse an average person that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most lay people are going to see this video and see him and see the crime and just be like, good job. And I'm not saying like, I'm pro police.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm doing all the things that I'm doing and having these conversations. I don't want anything to happen to these officers.
Right.
And I don't think anything should. I just want to talk about it so that we can prevent other officers from being in a position where they just don't happen to have a DA that.
Did this guy live or did he die?
Died.
He died. So in the event that he lives, right, having a possession of a firearm warrant from a felon, and I mean, this marijuana charge, it's probably nonsense, especially if it's under a felony amount. We're not really all concerned about that. But the fact that he's a convicted felon and he was in possession of another firearm, which sounds like they had a Glock switch, which that's even a more serious crime. So he's going to have 2 felonies looking at just from that alone. Not counting if he picked that gun up. I couldn't tell in the video. So 2, possibly 3 serious felonies. Say he lives. Now we're looking for convictions on this guy, right? This is going to go to trial. We want this guy for 3 felonies to be put away with a history like this, probably for life. If you didn't have the right approaches, right, all that's going to get tossed, and you did all that for nothing.
So, you said that maybe he, if he lived and they go to court and they realize, okay, well, we didn't have the things we needed and it gets thrown out. That happens all the time.
A lot more often than people think, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that I've arrested a couple times that legit did what they did. And, for whatever reason, they never get charged with the crime because they're able to pay for a good lawyer or whatever.
I'll say another problem, which doesn't pertain to this, but someone that you put in jail for 2 felonies, injury to a child and ag assault, those charges were dropped through no fault of yours. And he came back and committed 3 more felonies yesterday.
Really?
Yep.
Because was that the guy that was already out on bond for continuous family violence?
Yep. All that. I think it was like 3 serious family violence charges, all dismissed.
That had to be because the victim
Went down there and
did something.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we did photos, we did the strangulation form.
Yeah, I saw it was
we did
great
everything.
cases,
We did
yeah.
everything.
That alone should have put him away. But the victim, and this happens all the time too. The victim went down there, doesn't want to press charges anymore. He got out, and within a day, just brutally beat her. I think it was bad.
You took him to jail too?
We were there last night. Yeah, that's.
Oh, that was last night. Mm-hmm. Did he? Oh, he got caught though, huh?
Yeah, he tried running.
So, but it's So see what she does, and maybe he goes to jail. Maybe probably doesn't. I mean, how many times are we going to keep doing this?
At this point, they always say the state picks up family violence. Maybe in other counties, but I never see it here. But he also kicked a police officer in the face, so that should put him away right there.
So the other thing about this that I thought was really interesting, this is normal, where they post a photo and they say what it is and they show the Glock switch and they do all that.
Right.
I don't know that I have seen, and
this is funny, actually. Yeah.
Like, I watched this whole thing from start to finish, and I kind of know how they're presenting it and why,
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw this, I was like, oh God, like, why are they doing that in this video? Okay. Do they need to demonstrate and say, like, this is a full auto? No.
Do they do this with their other videos is the real question, right? Like, the other critical incidents they have, are they shooting the guns off and showing you? Good question. Or are they going, hey, don't ask questions about why we're here, but have you seen this gun? You know what I mean? Like, look, it may have been a little questionable, but we got a bad guy off the street with a gun,
So for me, this was it was kind of like a shock thing, like extra things. Like, there was extra things in here, and I'll have to go back to their videos and see if I'll have to find one where there was a critical incident and the person had a Glock switch. That would be telling.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I don't care. I just know kind of why they're presenting it in this way. And again, hope they do well and everything's okay and there's information we don't know. But that's not the goal here. We're pro police, everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
Yeah. So the point is to help you guys make better decisions if you are in a position where a similar position, and you can identify it and make that decision that keeps you out of, because people say this thing, and I absolutely hate it, where they say, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, take the Punisher skull,
right,
tattoo off of your back.
Dude,
it's like, no, you wouldn't rather any of those things. Because I know of an officer who, I mean, there was some culpability, but he didn't do anything illegal, and it resulted in him having to do the trial thing, and he was found not guilty, like everybody knew, right? And but he already, felt the repercussions from it, lost his job, and had to go through that whole process with his family. That's terrible.
That's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to a police shooting, which is something that, you can attest to this, of course, and we'll talk about your stuff on another episode, but when that happens, you want to be able to go home to whoever's at home, or your mom or dad, or whoever that might be. And because this is going to be a significant event in your life, right?
Right.
People are going to be contacting you or whatever. You want to be able to comfortably, for me, my wife, give my wife a hug, tell her I love her, and say, we're good.
Right.
Nothing's happening with this. That's the goal. You know what I mean? And so you just don't want to end up there for all the reasons, organizational, the city, all that. And sometimes too, there could be, or there probably is, or maybe this has happened over the many years in the past where everybody knows it was good from a legal perspective, but it doesn't look good.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. The optics of it.
Yeah, and so you kind of want to avoid those too. And real quick, I'll wrap this up. But one of those things I'm really not into, although you can do it when you can, a fleeing felon, right?
Yeah.
Shooting at a fleeing felon. First of all, you're on the run. Just did a video posted on YouTube on what you need to be able to do to be able to engage somebody while you're moving, right? So go watch that. But most bad guys are trying to get away.
Right.
They're trying to throw the gun. They're trying to evade the police. They're not usually running into houses and taking people hostage. And
Although that has happened.
yeah, it has happened. But weigh the risk versus the reward.
Right.
You're probably not in a great position to engage that person just because he's running away with a firearm, usually. And so I'm not saying don't do it, but that's one of those things that even if you're correct, it doesn't look good. People don't like it.
Right.
The community doesn't like it. You know, you shot him in the back, right? That's what they say.
There's been people that have been correct in their use of forces who are now sitting in prison. Like that happens, depending on where you do it and the circumstances and your, the media will blow it up. If you get a bad DA, you get bad judges, you gotta determine, is that worth it now or not?
And, well, I'm not gonna get into that. Let's leave that out. Leave that part out, what I was about to say. But anyways, I thought this was a good episode.
Good. Yeah.
If you guys are watching this, whatever platform you're watching it on, all the stuff that you're doing, you're liking it or whatever, leave a comment, tell me what your favorite color is. I have people doing that just to kind of help the algorithm, help us get this information out. So I really appreciate that. Continue to do that. Again, the Surviving the Street community, if it's past February 1st, the link to the community will be in the description. Blakewater Maneuver Training Solutions, Matt Hardnop Tempo Training Group will be in there, providing their own value in their own way. I'm going to be meeting with somebody here in a couple hours, going over adding him to the group as well. And myself, Blake, Matt, we all provide something of value in a different way. So there's something for everybody. You don't have to be a police officer to get in there. Once you do get in there, there are going to be some, community guidelines, we'll call them, right? So this is our community, and this isn't Instagram, this isn't Facebook, this isn't YouTube where anybody can say anything and they just get away with it, right? So you're going to have to be a professional, and the general rule is treat everybody with respect and you'll be fine. It's going to be a good time. Training courses, online discussions, giveaways, all kinds of stuff. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be sending out an email here shortly to the people that wanted to get in early. Other than that, February 1st, link will be down in the description. When you follow the link, you're going to get to an about page. Hopefully I got that all done and set up, so you'll get a good idea of what to expect inside of the community if you do decide to join. Cancel anytime. Just remember, if you cancel, if you decide to come back in for something, an opportunity, whatever it is, you're going to have to pay whatever price the membership fee is at that time. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
118, so this is my family all over. I can't copy. I want family all over. We got crews coming.